is because I've had it for 32 years, and it makes people very curious, because how can you always be on the front pages?
Have you ever watched someone's entire world collapse in real time? Just 5 minutes ago, Buckingham Palace delivered news so devastating and absolute that it sent shockwaves across every continent. Sarah Ferguson Fergie, the Duchess of York, the redhead who once laughed alongside Princess Diana, has been completely severed from the royal family. But what the headlines aren't telling you is that this wasn't a simple announcement. It was a calculated execution, driven by motives far more sinister than anyone imagined. Before sunrise on December 2nd, a senior palace aide burst into the Buckingham Palace press room with a message so blunt and shocking that even seasoned reporters people who've covered every royal scandal stood frozen as he announced that the Duchess of York would be removed from all remaining royal provisions effective immediately. Not transitioned, not eased out, cut out. Chaos erupted as phones lit up, editors shouted orders, and within minutes the news consumed every major network. One American anchor summed it up: "This is not a clarification. This is a severing." But the real question is why and why now? To understand the brutal speed of this decision, we need to look back to the warning signs that had been building long before the public noticed anything. Inside the royal household, Sarah's situation wasn't seen as a sudden crisis, but as the slow unraveling of a woman caught between royal rules, financial catastrophe, and shifting political tides. When King Charles took the throne, he brought a streamlined, less forgiving vision of the monarchy, one that viewed individuals like Sarah as reputational risks. Under Queen Elizabeth, she had been an exception, treated with grace and sentiment, allowed to remain at Royal Lodge with Prince Andrew, welcomed at family gatherings despite her missteps. But Charles inherited a world defined by relentless online scrutiny and political pressure, a world where what one aide called nostalgic allowances could no longer be afforded. And the harsh truth is that unlike Andrew, Sarah held no HRH title, no working royal role, no formal justification for security or housing support, making her, in the eyes of the new monarchy, a remnant of a past they no longer wished to carry. A version of the monarchy weighed down by controversies was something the crown was desperate to bury forever, and behind palace walls, discussions about Royal Lodge began long before anyone realized rising maintenance costs, the future of grace and favor, residences, and the legal ties binding Andrew to the property kept resurfacing, with Sarah's name appearing each time as an unavoidable complication. No HRH title, no duties, no defined institutional purpose, an anomaly in a hierarchy-driven system. But tradition and finances weren't the only forces at play. Things grew darker in late 2022 when political figures in Westminster quietly pressured the monarchy to confront lingering concerns linked to the Epstein fallout. As the public increasingly questioned why a non-working, divorced duchess continued living on a crown estate property, the palace tracked the polling, recognized the unfolding pattern, and saw Sarah becoming a symbol of everything Charles's modernization plan was designed to eliminate, making the question not if, but when her position would end. As legal, financial, reputational, and political pressures converged, early conversations about Sarah's future sharpened into something urgent and unavoidable. And then came Catherine's discovery. The first real signs of trouble weren't found in headlines, but in subtle anomalies only those deeply embedded in the royal system would notice. In early 2023, during a routine briefing at Kensington Palace, Catherine overheard staff discussing Windsor Properties' maintenance costs at Royal Lodge had doubled again, and with uneasy hesitation one staffer referred to the ongoing complication. Sarah still living there, still not a working royal, still tied to Andrew's diminishing position. Catherine didn't intervene, but she absorbed the tension, knowing that when palace staff speak cautiously, something deeper is always unfolding. Weeks later, another inconsistency emerged when Catherine received a briefing pack summarizing public sentiment. Toward Catherine's analysis of public sentiment across different branches of the royal family mostly confirmed expectations. Strong support for the Wales family and cautious optimism about Charles's modernization. But one graph stood out: a sharp spike in negative sentiment toward the York household. Not Beatrice or Eugenie, who remained privately respected, but specifically Sarah. The accompanying analysis was telling. Public perception reflects unresolved associations and outdated expectations. Catherine immediately understood the public was questioning why Sarah still lived on crown property without a formal role, even as controversies mounted. The moment crystallized at a spring charity event when an older woman politely asked Catherine why the Duchess of York still occupied such a large house if she wasn't working for the crown. Catherine responded diplomatically, but inside she felt the tension tightening. When ordinary citizens voice what advisors quietly whisper, palace silence becomes dangerously untenable. Meanwhile, inside Windsor, the atmosphere had shifted. Staff who had once described Andrew and Sarah's arrangement as odd but functional now used strained, uncertain language. Even more alarming were briefings on foreign press coverage. American outlets were quietly connecting Sarah back to the Epstein narrative, including her infamous emails and the revived congressional inquiry. Catherine recognized the potential catastrophe. Once an individual becomes entwined in an international scandal, the Crown's risk assessment changes entirely, and Sarah had no role, no institutional protection, and no functional justification to remain within the royal framework. By late summer, Catherine saw internal documents listing Sarah prominently among external reputational threats, described bluntly as a non-working royal with unstable finances, public visibility, and unresolved associations that conflicted with the monarchy's modernization strategy. This marked the beginning of the end, a strategic reckoning. By December, Buckingham Palace conversations had escalated from quiet concern to urgent planning. The question was no longer if action would be taken, but how far the Crown was prepared to go. At the center of this shift stood Queen Camilla, acutely aware of the fragility of the monarchy's public image. Her mornings, once consumed by thick press summaries, now revealed a disturbing pattern. Major American outlets were no longer focusing solely on Andrew's downfall, but turning their attention to Sarah, with articles and broadcasts questioning why the Duchess of York still lived on a crown estate while carrying reputational risks tied to both Andrew's scandals and her own financial troubles. The tone was unmistakably shifting. Curiosity was hardening into open criticism, and for a monarchy acutely aware of its international image, the development was serious. Camilla convened a private meeting in the Green Drawing Room, a quiet space chosen to avoid casual eavesdropping, inviting Sir Edward Chapman, a senior advisor with decades of crisis management experience, Fiona Lyle, a communications strategist known for her razor-sharp instincts, and Rupert Kane, a former editor who had guided the palace through turbulent media storms. Calm yet urgent, Camilla opened the discussion. Public patience is not endless, nor is institutional tolerance. Sir Edward unfolded a document tracking the sharp amplification of international coverage, noting the rising mentions of Sarah's financial troubles, the Epstein connection, and the revived congressional inquiry across American media. Even cautious British outlets were framing her continued residence at Royal Lodge as a symbol of inconsistency. Princess Anne joined the conversation, bluntly stating, "We're trying to streamline the monarchy, not drag the past forward with us." Though she had long respected Sarah personally, and insisted that institutions survive by following rules, not memories. Separately, William, in his measured way, echoed the sentiment, emphasizing the stakes. "We cannot continue carrying burdens that do not belong to the future we are building." The most revealing insight came from the palace communications team, which presented data showing a sharp rise in negative sentiment among American viewers over 50, a loyal, engaged demographic often nostalgic for the Diana-era monarchy. The implications were clear and devastating. This crucial audience was growing increasingly frustrated with the unresolved issues surrounding the York family, making Sarah's position within the royal framework untenable. The controversies reached a turning point when a young communications staffer, reviewing engagement metrics, offered a chilling insight. The public wasn't just watching royal drama, they were framing it as a moral question. How much responsibility does a family bear for the actions of someone linked to them? Camilla and Charles took this to heart as they reviewed the draft statement. Crisp, restrained, deeply institutional. It didn't attack Sarah or reference scandals. It framed the decision as procedural, necessary, and aligned with long-term restructuring. Yet beneath its calm tone, anyone versed in royal subtext could read the message clearly. The crown was stepping away permanently. Camilla insisted it be framed as policy, not punishment, and Charles agreed, leading to several lines being rewritten to emphasize neutrality and precedent. December 2nd was chosen for the release. Inside the palace, a quiet understanding settled irreversible action had been decided, and its impact would ripple far beyond Windsor and Buckingham Palace. At 7:20 a.m., the meticulously worded statement went live, spreading worldwide within minutes. Effective immediately, Sarah Ferguson would no longer receive housing provisions, security, or transitional support. Every line felt like a door slamming shut. For Sarah, the impact was immediate and devastating. Sitting at a small writing desk in a London hotel suite, where she had quietly moved days earlier sensing something decisive was coming, her phone erupted with notifications. When the Buckingham Palace header appeared on her screen, she froze, reading the statement twice as if the words might change. They didn't. What struck her first wasn't the loss of Royal Lodge, foreshadowed for months, but the tone, the absence of warmth, the formality, the unmistakable message that the Crown was drawing a clean, unbridgeable line between herself and the institution she had once been part of. Regardless of the years Sarah Ferguson spent rehabilitating her reputation, the charity work, the children's books, the public resilience, none of it mattered. In the eyes of the monarchy, she was no longer part of its future. Across global newsrooms, the reaction was shock mixed with grim recognition. King Charles's modernization strategy had long promised a leaner, more focused royal structure, but few expected it to hit so sharply and publicly at the Duchess of York. The timing was surgical. Andrew was being relocated to a smaller Sandringham property. The Epstein investigation in the United States was accelerating, and Parliament's pressure to ensure ethical clarity around royal associations had reached a peak unseen in years. Observers saw clearly that Sarah had become a liability the Crown could no longer defend. The media storm intensified as pundits catalogued her setbacks. Financial entanglements, including the failed Pegasus Bitcoin venture. The infamous email calling Epstein a supreme friend, charity partnerships reframed as a career cut short by association and misjudgment. Even her personal resilience recast as part of a tragic narrative of repeated second chances never fully realized. Behind the headlines, however, a far more personal and urgent story was unfolding. Beatrice and Eugenie had been preparing for this moment, devastated but unsurprised, having quietly readied their mother's escape. Their property in Comporta, Portugal, had been prepped, temporary accommodations arranged, and privacy secured upon arrival. This was no vacation, it was a strategic relocation, a survival plan executed with military precision to ensure Sarah landed somewhere safe, quiet, and controllable. Yet beneath the logistics lay a deeper, heartbreaking fear. Once Sarah left the UK, the distance between her and the monarchy could become permanent and irreversible. Inside the palace, advisors felt relief that an institutional dilemma had been resolved, but also apprehension. Sarah remained unpredictable, outspoken, financially vulnerable, and deeply knowledgeable about Andrew's affairs, capable, potentially, of unsettling the monarchy further. And then comes the question everyone is asking, but no one is answering. What are the real motives behind this decision? If you think it's simply about modernization or financial efficiency, you're missing the deeper truths. Motive 1, the Epstein shadow. The revived congressional inquiry in the United States isn't focused solely on Andrew. Investigators are now examining financial connections, communications, and associations that extend to Sarah herself. Placing her directly within a web of scrutiny, the Crown can no longer ignore Sarah Ferguson's past emails, business dealings, and proximity to figures under scrutiny created exposure the Crown could no longer tolerate. By severing ties now, the palace establishes legal distance if she is investigated or implicated. The monarchy can truthfully claim no official connection. The timing was strategic, coinciding with mounting international pressure. Motive 2, financial liability. Sarah's failed ventures, mounting debts, and questionable partnerships posed potential embarrassment, and sources suggest she may have been seeking royal assistance for legal fees and security. The palace had to choose between continuing support for someone with no official role or cutting ties entirely. They chose severance. Motive 3, the American audience. Polling data showed that American viewers, particularly over 50, were increasingly critical of the monarchy maintaining ties to Sarah, and for an institution reliant on international goodwill, losing this support was unacceptable. Motive 4, William's succession planning. Sources indicate he has pushed for clean breaks to protect the monarchy for George, Charlotte, and Louis, leaving behind figures whose controversies could threaten the future. Motive 5, the Portugal connection. Comporta offers isolation, privacy, and strategic containment outside certain EU extradition frameworks, allowing the palace to frame Sarah's relocation as personal rather than punitive. In the hours following the announcement, tension permeated every corner of the royal ecosystem. Legal advisors convened in a quiet office to review estate leases, succession constraints, and policies governing non-working royals, concluding bluntly, Her HRH status and support structures were gone, with no statutory pathway back. At Windsor, Andrew was being relocated to a smaller Sandringham property, a routine restructuring on the surface, but symbolically stark. He remained under the Crown's roof. Sarah did not. Their long, unusual domestic partnership had reached its breaking point, imposed not by emotion, but by policy. At Kensington Palace, William observed the developments with measured, thoughtful silence, fully aware of the stakes for the future of the monarchy. William bore no personal grudge against Sarah, yet he understood the political risk posed by her financial instability and proximity to Andrew's scandals. Privately, staff noted he seemed more relieved than distressed, the lingering uncertainty finally resolved. Catherine's perspective, quieter but equally grounded, balanced sympathy with pragmatism. She understood Sarah's struggles under tabloid scrutiny, but recognized that the palace could not protect a figure whose presence complicated modernization efforts. Letting Sarah step away, however harsh it appeared, was the only sustainable option. Inside the administrative wings, aides sifted through urgent practical implications. Without royal support, Sarah would no longer qualify for security coverage, a critical concern given renewed public scrutiny, and any travel to countries cooperating with US investigations would require careful legal planning. Financially, she faced an immediate need to generate income, and with intimate knowledge of royal operations, personal relationships, and private conversations, a desperate Sarah Ferguson represented precisely the kind of risk that kept palace advisors awake at night. Book deals, tell-all interviews, documentaries, each a potential minefield. Meanwhile, Beatrice and Eugenie confronted the emotional impossible, daughters torn between institutional necessity and maternal protection. They understood the pressures that led to the palace's decision, yet watching their mother expelled from the world she had known for nearly 4 decades was devastating. Within minutes, they reached out to Sarah, conversations brief and emotional, focused on immediate practicalities, discreet delivery of documents, reviewing bank accounts, engaging legal counsel for the Portugal transition. Every detail mattered, for one misstep could expose their mother to dangers from which the palace was no longer obligated to shield her. Beneath the logistics lay an unspoken question. Once their mother left British soil, essentially exiled from the institution her grandmother once led, would she ever truly return? Meanwhile, the global reaction varied dramatically. In America, viewers framed this as the monarchy finally holding itself accountable to modern ethical standards, even if painfully late. In Britain, opinions were divided. Older generations remembered Sarah fondly and saw the action as unnecessarily harsh, while younger audiences viewed it as long overdue institutional housekeeping. Across Europe, particularly in nations with their own monarchies, royal observers analyzed the decision as a blueprint for handling legacy complications, and in Commonwealth countries, reactions ranged from sympathy to frustration. Critics argue that the monarchy continues generating drama when its focus should be on meaningful service, and public perspective matters because global. Reactions will shape how historians ultimately judge this decision. As evening fell on December 2nd, Sarah remained in her London hotel suite silent, issuing no statement, making no public appearance, not even posting on social media. For a woman known for communication, the silence was deafening. Friends described her as processing shock with steely determination. She had survived scandals, divorces, financial ruin, and public humiliation before, but this was different: an institutional rejection, absolute and irreversible. Hours were spent on the phone with her daughters, legal advisors, and a few loyal confidants, reviewing documents, making lists, and methodically planning next steps. Sarah Ferguson may be many things, but passive is not one of them. Meanwhile, for King Charles and his advisors, the decision represents both a victory and a gamble. The victory, eliminating a complication that had become untenable, sending a clear message about modernization priorities, and creating legal and political distance from potential scandals. The gamble, unleashing a financially vulnerable, potentially angry ex-royal with decades of insider knowledge and nothing left to lose. History shows that exiled royals rarely fade quietly. Consider the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, Princess Margaret, or even Diana in her final year. Now, multiplied by modern media, social platforms, and an international audience hungry for revelations, Sarah has that same power. The palace's strategy assumes she will accept her exile gracefully. But what if she doesn't? Financial desperation, personal anger, or human frustration could drive her to speak with journalists, documentarians, or authors, potentially creating the monarchy's worst nightmare. Beyond the headlines, this story offers profound lessons about power, loyalty, and reinvention, reminding us how fragile yet consequential decisions within royal walls can be. Lesson 1. Unresolved problems don't disappear, they compound. Sarah's financial troubles, controversial associations, and ambiguous place within the royal framework were ignored until the palace had no choice but to act decisively. In our own lives, what small cracks are we letting widen until they demand painful action? Lesson 2. No structure built in one season lasts forever. Sarah had anchored her identity, security, and sense of belonging to the monarchy. When that foundation collapsed, she had nothing else to fall back on. How much of what we depend on careers, relationships, social validation might vanish unexpectedly? Lesson 3. Institutions always prioritize survival over individuals. The monarchy chose its future over Sarah's comfort, not out of cruelty, but out of logic. Lesson 4. Sometimes reinvention requires a forced break. Sarah didn't choose Portugal, didn't choose exile, but this separation may ultimately give her something the palace never could: independence, freedom to rebuild on her own terms. The hidden truth is that this announcement isn't the end of Sarah Ferguson's story, it's the beginning of a new chapter. For nearly 40 years, she existed in the shadow of the monarchy, defined by her marriage, judged by royal standards, constrained by institutional expectations. Now, for the first time since 1986, she is free to speak, write, and live without palace oversight. Whether this freedom becomes liberation or devastation depends on her next steps. Retreat quietly and fade into obscurity, or speak, write, and reveal truths that could make the monarchy regret this decision. As December 2nd closed, the world was left with the undeniable reality that Sarah Ferguson's fall isn't just a headline, it's a human story about resilience, consequence, and the brutal calculus of power. She has been a public figure, a mother, a duchess, a survivor of scandal, and now she faces a forced reinvention. For the monarchy, this decision represents deliberate modernization, a smaller, more accountable crown navigating a transparent world. For Sarah, it may be a painful but transformative opportunity, a chance to redefine her life outside the walls of Windsor. Power structures define rules, but individuals define their stories, and Sarah Ferguson has never been silent. Now, as the palace draws a final line, the world waits to see how she will respond, what she will reveal, and who she will become without royal constraints. The fall of a duchess is more than a headline. It's a reminder of the delicate balance between consequence and reinvention, institutional authority and personal agency, and the life we inherit versus the life we create. The palace has spoken, but Sarah's story may only just be beginning, and the repercussions of this day will echo for years.